hard to put into words what it was like watching it, whether you were a fan or not. Just to be in the presence of greatness in that moment was phenomenal.
January 22nd, 2006 was the date. And got to mention, this is a guy that scored 60 points in his final NBA game, and that was only the second best performance he had from an individual perspective. If you think about it, there are thousands upon thousands of people that had gathered outside the Staples Center to pay their respects to Kobe Bryant. Michael and I had been on the air for about 4 hours, and we saw the crowd when it was small, then it got into the hundreds, and now it is morphed into the thousands. A quick reminder, the Grammys are tonight at that very building, the Staples Center. The Lakers will be back in action right inside against the Clippers on Tuesday evening.
And again, the helicopter crash occurred about 9:52 local time there in Los Angeles in the Calabasas area, which is about half hour, 45 minutes northwest of Los Angeles. We had the local officials of the fire department, the police, give us a update on the information earlier. Here is Jennifer Hamady from the National Transportation Safety Board with more information on what happened with that helicopter crash.
The NTSB is launching a GO team to investigate an accident involving a Sikorsky 76B as in Bravo helicopter, which crashed around 9:47 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in Calabasas, California. On behalf of the NTSB, I'd like to extend our deepest sympathies to those who lost loved ones in this tragic event. In total, we'll have a team of 18 who will be investigating the accident with expertise in operations, human performance, airworthiness, structures, and power plants. And we already have a staff person from the regional office on site. We will also have 2 staff members from our family assistance team who will be working with the families and other loved ones to help them get their resources that they need over the next couple of days and months. We are leaving in a few minutes. I expect we'll arrive late tonight. We're likely to have a media briefing sometime tomorrow. Please monitor our Twitter, which is NTSB_newsroom, for those announcements. I have time for a couple of quick questions. If you'll raise your hand, state your name and your affiliation. The question is, what types of things will we be looking for? Our team will be looking at the history of the pilot and whatever crew was on board. We'll be looking at maintenance records of the helicopter. We will be looking at records of the owner and operator of the helicopter, and a number of other things that we look at as part of the investigation.
Greg Clare with CNN. How soon do you anticipate getting to work tonight once you land in California?
That's hard to tell. The question is how late will we be getting to work? We do have somebody who's on scene or en route from our Western Region office, and so when we get on scene, we'll have to assess what we're able to do at that time.
Fox 5. Media on the ground is reporting 9 people were killed in that crash. Does Sikorsky typically carry 9 people? Is it a helicopter that can be capable of carrying that many people?
The question is how many people can be carried in the Sikorsky 76B. We are trying to figure out what the configuration of that helicopter is. It really just depends on the configuration. So that's something we're still trying to verify. One more question. Is it typical to send 18? And I should clarify, it's not a total of 18 investigators. That includes our investigative staff. There's the investigative staff, there's the board members, there are a couple from media relations, there's our family assistance team, and I think that covers it. But it's typical for any of our investigations. This does not change anything. We This is just how we would respond to any investigation. Like, does this type of helicopter have a black box? That's something we'll have to look to as part of the investigation. We're still on our way there. So thank you very much.
Here's a look at Manhattan in New York. The famed Madison Square Garden lit up in Laker colors tonight. There's a look inside. Of course, the Lakers played the Knicks last Wednesday, showing respect to Kobe Bryant, 41 years old. He had some memorable games there in New York. He only went there once a year to play the Knicks, but when he did, he typically put on a pretty good show for some of the best basketball fans in the world. 824, his 2 jersey numbers.
Take a look at the approximate site of the crash. 9:52 a.m., as Michael said, local time. Foggy conditions were in the area. As you just heard from the NTSB, they're waiting to hear more. When the helicopter crashed, it ignited a brush fire, and that made it very difficult for emergency personnel to get to the scene. Obviously, we will learn here more in the many hours and days to come. A tragedy, the loss of Kobe Bryant. They did mention his daughter, Gianna. I just want to mention his oldest daughter, Natalia, was 17. Bianca was 3. And his youngest, Capri, is 7 months old. We're joined by Richard Jefferson. He's an ESPN NBA analyst. Richard, we've asked the same thing to every person, so I'm going to ask you this first. What's your reaction?
It was devastating. I just celebrated, my 3-year-old and 5-year-old have back-to-back birthdays yesterday and the day before. And, I'm sitting there with them, and all of a sudden this news comes in, and you don't believe it. It doesn't make any sense. And, there's really just no words. I tried to figure out what to say, and, the best thing that I can think of is, when you find out that Whitney Houston passed, or Michael Jackson passed, or Prince passes. Those are things that just catches the entire world off guard. This man is not just a basketball icon. I think we're limiting him. This man was a global icon. People all around the world are mourning. He helped spread the game of basketball. His daughter Gianna, who, he said helped bring him back to basketball because he felt like he had exhausted everything he could. And his daughter Gianna was the first one to say, "Hey, Dad, let's watch this game. Hey, Dad, I want you to have me coach." So to be there with my kids and then to see, this news, it was devastating.
Hey, Richard, I want to ask you about something that's been making the waves today. It's something that Kobe's always kind of identified with, but it's really working its way into the ether today, and that is the Mamba mentality. And, just as a basketball fan, I just thought it was a way of a life for him on the court, but apparently it stretches way beyond that. As a former pro, a contemporary, can you take us inside the Mamba mentality from what you knew of Kobe Bryant?
Well, I'll say this. The first NBA Finals game I ever went to, it was to watch the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Pacers. The first NBA Finals game I ever played in was against the Lakers my rookie year. And, when I played in Golden State, that's when Kobe hurt his Achilles. So it's like I felt like I had, been there or played against him in so many different moments. And, he was just perfection. He had all of the physical tools. He had all of the mental tools. He had all of the, just the emotional awareness that it took. And people don't understand how hard it is to achieve greatness. They don't understand how selfish you have to be to achieve greatness. And that means that there was nobody and there was nothing that was going to stop him from achieving his goals. And that's to be one of the greatest athletes that, this country has ever seen, probably this world has ever seen. And, that's what he just tried to embody into everybody once he retired. And it was funny, once he retired, he kind of became a friend of everyone. And everyone was kind of cautious, like, wait, this is a new Kobe Bryant. But he was like, yo, my competitive juices are still here, but I don't have to keep everybody at bay. I can now help grow the game that has done so much for me. I can help mentor younger players. Kyrie is not playing tonight because, he had meant so much to Kyrie and really had just, expressed, a brotherhood and a family with all of these players and the generation that before him, the generation that he played with, and his legacy will continue. It will continue because there are so many athletes that are 15, 16, that, probably 10, 11 years old that understand the Mamba mentality. They watched him play growing up. And now all of a sudden that mentality will continue to have impact on this league and other sports for years to come.
Last one, you said his legacy will live on. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you what that legacy is to you.
To me, it was, he could accomplish and could do things and could focus in that not many players ever did. That was a level of respect that I had for him, because growing up being a Michael Jordan fan, as was he, it was like, God, I wish I could have that focus. I wish I could have that relentless drive. But very, very few people ever achieve that, where they have all the physical tools and all the mental drive and physical drive. There's the Tiger Woods, the Michael Jordans, the Roger Federers. There are very, very few that have ever achieved that on this planet, that have the tools mentally and physically, and that's his legacy to me.
Last thing for you, why do you think he connected so much? As you mentioned, when he was playing, he may not have had a lot of friends on the court, but as David Fisdale joined us earlier, that's probably part of his greatness. He had to push everything out just to make sure that the priority was set to be the best that he could be, and his ceiling was incredibly high. Why do you think he's connected, though, with players that are in the league now that never played with him, with younger people that are just getting into basketball, and people outside of basketball, as Michael mentioned, in Hollywood, pop culture? Why do you think he was so all-encompassing?
Well, because he was a kid that came in at 17, 18 years old, and he knew what he wanted to accomplish. Somebody was saying, we were talking here, and it was like, man, we're not going to get a Hall of Fame speech from Kobe Bryant. And I was like, Kobe Bryant might have wrote that speech when he was 9 years old, right? We might still have that speech. That's the type of person, that's the type of focus he had. And I think the younger generation, no different than when we looked up to Michael Jordan, the younger generation, even my generation, looked up to Kobe Bryant. And once he was that competitor, they wanted to compete like him. They wanted to have the versatility in the game. And he also did it here in LA. This is the biggest stage. Like, he continued Showtime. Right, him and Shaquille O'Neal and what he was able to accomplish after Shaquille O'Neal left. This was all about, LA and doing it under the brightest lights with all of the people around watching you, and you did not let anyone down for 20 years, even when you look at his final game and how he finished his career.
It's well said. The numbers just don't do it justice, but the numbers are truly remarkable. 5 NBA titles, 18 All-Star appearances. A father, probably more important, a father than all of those NBA accolades, and we appreciate this new father, Richard Jefferson, joining us on SportsCenter this evening. Richard, really appreciate your perspective.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you.
All right, Zubin, continue to share some of the reaction in and around basketball on the death of Kobe Bryant, the Hall of Famer, Michael Jordan, the guy that Kobe wanted to be or maybe even surpass in terms of basketball accolades. He said the following, quote, "I'm in shock over the tragic news of Kobe and Gianna's passing. Words can't describe the pain I'm feeling. I loved Kobe. He was like a little brother to me. We used to talk often, and I will miss those conversations very much. The NBA family is devastated by the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna. For 20 seasons, he showed us what is possible when remarkable talent blends with an absolute devotion to winning." Yvette, his wife, joins me in sending my deepest condolences to Vanessa, the Lakers organization, and basketball fans around the world.
Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, weighing in himself. The NBA family is devastated by the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna. For 20 seasons, Kobe showed us what is possible when remarkable talent blends with an absolute devotion to winning. That sounds just like Jordan's statement, doesn't it? How about that? He was one of the most extraordinary players in the history of our game, with accomplishments that are legendary: 5 NBA championships, an NBA MVP award, 18 NBA All-Star selections, and 2 Olympic gold medals. But he will be remembered most for inspiring people around the world to pick up a basketball and compete to the very best of their ability. He was generous with the wisdom he acquired, and he saw it as a mission to share it with future generations. Silver went on to say of players, taking special delight in passing down his love of the game to Gianna. We send our heartfelt condolences to his wife, Vanessa, and their family, the Lakers organization, and the entire sports world.
Again, Kobe Bryant, 41 years old, one of 9 people on that helicopter that crashed this morning outside of Los Angeles, including his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, who was just beginning her young basketball career, and they were on their way to a game in which she was about to play. Kobe's been so involved in her development and taking her around the country to see various games, NBA, WNBA, women's college basketball as well. Kobe and his daughter, again, crashed in a helicopter early this morning in Los Angeles, among 9 people dead. When Kobe played his last game Zubin, it was also the same night that the Golden State Warriors were going for a record 73 wins.
That's right.
And the very last night of the NBA season back in 2016, April 13th. And Michael Wilbon, who joined us earlier, talked about which one would you want to see? Did you want to see 73 or did you want to see Kobe's last game? And I watched both because I have multiple TVs in my basement. But on that night, Kobe went out with 60 points. He dropped the microphone, Mamba out, what everyone remembers. He will not get to give the Hall of Fame speech that he deserved, but he did give the speech when he left the game.
Hey, guys, you know, it's, I can't believe how fast 20 years went by. I mean, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And, you know, to be standing here at center court with you guys, my teammates behind me, and appreciating all this, you know, the journey that we've been on. You know, we've been through our ups and been through our downs. And I think the most important part is that we all stayed together throughout. You know, I grew up a diehard Laker fan. Diehard. I mean, I knew everything about every player that's ever played here. So to be drafted and then traded to this organization and to spend 20 years here, I mean, you can't write something better than this. And I'm more proud of the fact that not about the championships, but about the down years, because we didn't run. We didn't run. We played through all that stuff, and we got our championships, and we did it the right way. And all I can do here is just thank you guys. Thank you guys for all the years of support. Thank you guys for all the motivation. Thank you for all the inspiration. And, you know, what's funny, the thing that had me cracking up all night long was the fact that I go through 20 years of everybody screaming to pass the ball. And on the last night, they're like, don't pass it. This has been absolutely beautiful, you guys. I can't believe it's come to an end. You guys will always be in my heart, and I sincerely appreciate it. No words can describe how I feel about you guys. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. God, I love you guys. And I love you guys. And my family, my wife Vanessa, our daughters Natalia and Gianna, you know, thank you guys for all your sacrifice. You know, for all the hours I spent in the gym working and training. And Vanessa, you holding down the family the way that you have. I can't, there's no way that I can thank you enough for that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And what can I say? Mamba out.
So fitting that Kobe would go out that way with his basketball career. Because people ask, are you going to write something? He's like, no, raw, unscripted, true to who he is in that moment. And that's why so many people have just looked up to him in ways that's hard to describe if you're not from the Los Angeles area specifically. Sure, we all have our basketball or sports icons, I should say, and Kobe Bryant clearly is one of those people. But as you can see here from these visuals that are popped up outside Staples Center, he meant much more than that, something deeper than that. And even back at his high school outside of Philadelphia, Zubin, Lower Merion.
Lower Merion High School, Ardmore, Pennsylvania, where his coach saw him as a freshman and within 5 minutes said, kid, you're headed to the NBA. He was right. One thing I want to mention, because Kobe is an international person, Italy was so much part of his history. Roughly 1 out of 4 players in the NBA today, roughly 1 out of every 4 guys was born outside of the United States. And part of their love for the game came from watching Kobe Bryant.
An international superstar is what his career became, what he did in the NBA, traveling globally with the Olympics and spending a lot of time in China as well. That is why, as Zubin said, so many people around the world are still to feel the grief of Kobe Bryant, dead at the age of 41.
One play at a time. Do whatever it takes to get into the end zone.
Excuse me.
Ma?
Saquon, I made you a bowl of soup.
I don't think this is the right time.
There's always a good time for Campbell's Chunky.
Good call, Mom.
I know.
Fill it right with Campbell's Chunky, packed with hearty meat and veggies. Soup that eats like a meal.
We made USAA Bank for members like Cassie. She's practical and always gets the most bang for her buck. USAA Bank helps Cassie keep more of her money with no monthly service fees or minimum balance requirements. USAA. What you're made of, we're made for.
DiGiorno Rising Crust Pizza now has even more cheese. It's so cheesy, you'll need a pickup line to go with it. Like, did it hurt? When all that cheese fell from heaven and landed on you? It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno, now with more cheese.
I just feel stuck, Doc, and I'm hearing voices.
You feel stuck because you are stuck in a giant chocolate bar.
Huh. What about the voices?
That's me.
There it is again.
Meet the first ever Mazda CX-30. Feel alive.
Discover automatically matches all the cash back you earn at the end of your first year. Dollar for dollar. Millions of people a year get their cash back matched. What are you waiting for? Unlimited cash back match, only from Discover.
5 for $4? Who likes saving money? I like saving money. For $4, you can get a bacon cheeseburger, some fries, chicken nuggets, a drink and a cookie.
$4. I'm gonna eat dinner and then I'm gonna eat late night.
The 5 for 4 deal. Your way, way better.
T-Mobile 5G is here, and it's nationwide. While some 5G signals go only blocks, T-Mobile 5G goes miles. Beyond the big cities, to the small towns, to the people. Millions of Americans can have access to 5G on T-Mobile. This is just the beginning. T-Mobile, the first and only nationwide 5G network.
I needed legal advice for my shop. That's when I remembered that my ex-boyfriend actually went to law school, so I called him. He didn't call me back.
If your ex-boyfriend isn't a lawyer, call LegalZoom and we'll connect you with an attorney. LegalZoom, where life meets legal.
Breakfast wants you back. Try Just Crack an Egg, packed with real potatoes, veggies, meat, and cheese. Just add a fresh egg for a hot scramble in less than 2 minutes to get those warm, fuzzy feelings again. Take breakfast back. Find it in the egg aisle.
We've always made quality furnishings for the many people. And when we sell many of them, we make them more affordable. To us, that just makes sense. IKEA, make the dream yours.
He knew this day would come. All that hard work is about to pay off. Upload your resume on Indeed.
We made USAA Bank for members like Cassie. She's practical and always gets the most bang for her buck. USAA Bank helps Cassie keep more of her money with no monthly service fees or minimum balance requirements. USAA. What you're made of, we're made for.
Okay, guys, the bus is down, but we've got a spot. Follow Coach Kevin.
Sorry again that we're fully booked. This is the best we could do on such short notice.
This is amazing. Thank you.
Treating others like we'd like to be treated has always been our guiding principle.
SportsCenter breaking news coverage continues. Kobe Bryant, one of 9 people killed in a helicopter crash earlier this morning in Los Angeles. His 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, also on board that crash in the Calabasas area of Los Angeles, about a half hour, 45 minutes northwest of the city. He was on his way to a youth basketball game featuring his daughter, Gianna. And as you can see from the scene there outside Staples Center, several people have swarmed to downtown Los Angeles to pay their respects. Zubin Mehinti, Michael Eaves here with you as we continue our coverage on the death of Kobe Bryant.
Outpouring of support coming far beyond the NBA, encapsulating just how big of a figure Kobe Bryant was. One of the best players in women's college basketball, Sabrina Ionescu with the University of Oregon. She was getting ready for a big game today on ESPN2 against their arch rival, Oregon State. But none of that really mattered. She's trying to win a national championship and go to a Final Four. But on this particular day, she was thinking of Kobe Bryant. You can tell how emotional she was before the game. 24, forever, here she is.
And of course, the world lost a legend, and you, of course, a very close friend in Kobe Bryant today. Can you talk about the emotions that you felt finding out just before the game and coming out here to finish?
I mean, everything I do it for him, obviously. Really close friend, and this season's for him.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Sabrina Ionescu with our Brooke Weisbrod. You could sense the amount of emotion. And Mike, I would imagine anybody that we check in on from the next days, hours, weeks to come, you're going to see some emotion.
Absolutely, especially those around the NBA that had personal connections with Kobe Bryant, either as a teammate or some other aspect of the game off the court, and that would include Austin Rivers. We saw his father, Doc Rivers, earlier, clearly emotional as he was addressing the media before the Clippers game against the Magic, and Austin Rivers sharing so much of the same feelings and sentiments of other players around the league.
Such a great loss, you know. He's one of the greatest players to ever play the game, but more importantly, just for what he's meant for the youth of basketball and sports. I got to be honest, I'm a competitor, and obviously we cared about losing tonight, but I got to be honest with you, it wasn't on my mind when we lost, us losing the game. You go back to reality, and the facts are that we lost somebody that meant so much to all of us. And then you hear about his daughter. As a father, I've said many prayers for that family, and I'm going to continue to do so. It looked like he was the happiest he's ever been after basketball. Him and Gigi's relationship was, I mean, everybody saw it. That's all he posted about. And this was tough. I don't know how we played today. I would start thinking about the game, and then it would just snap back into my mind. We have to play tomorrow, and I'm sure Utah will do a tribute, and this pain's not going to go away anytime soon. You don't even have to be a basketball fan to feel this. You know, one of the most competitive athletes, iconic athletes. And honestly, to be completely honest, more so as a father, what he's meant to that family. I'm going to pray for Vanessa and the kids. And may he rest in peace, man. This was tough.
During Kobe's 20 years in the NBA, he scored 33,643 points, fourth most in history after LeBron James passed him last night. He won 5 NBA championships. He was twice the Finals MVP, and he was also the league MVP back in 2008. And there's the scene, LA Live across the street from Staples Center tonight, which is hosting the Grammys, but still thousands of Laker fans and other Angelinos have come down to downtown to pay their respects for Kobe Bryant, who passed away earlier today in a helicopter crash outside of Los Angeles.
And on Tuesday, the Lakers will be inside the Staples Center to take on the Los Angeles Clippers, and you can only imagine the amount of emotion that's going to be coursing through that building. And maybe about 48 hours from now, Michael Wilbon joins us for a little bit of perspective. I know, Michael, you joined us a little bit earlier in our coverage, but since then, I know you talked to a lot of people around the league, and you just had an opportunity to let this marinate and digest. What are your thoughts right now?
Well, they're not much different than they were a couple of hours earlier, to tell you the truth. And Austin Rivers very eloquently expressed thoughts that a lot of us are feeling. I don't know that the thoughts are going to have that much in the way of range to them. It's something that we're not going to get over anytime soon. Austin said you don't have to be a basketball fan. You don't have to have been around the industry for years like some of us, like I have, to feel the hurt. I mean, maybe people who have certainly gotten to know him and been around him, and I was for half his life. It's hard to imagine, but remember, he was an 18-year-old in the NBA, and so that's 23 years as a grown man. And my thoughts initially aren't of basketball; they are certainly of his family and his wife and daughters, with losing a daughter as a parent. That's just so difficult to even wrap your head around. And so there's that. There are other moments and other things that come to me much more quickly. Some of them are very personal because I have been covering the league for so long. All of Kobe Bryant's career, all of it. And one of them has to do with my own life. 12 years ago, I had a event, as they say, medically, a heart attack. And I get home from the hospital without having talked to really anybody, and there's an enormous vase of flowers at the front desk. At the front desk at my home, at the front door. And they said, the note said, from Kobe Bryant. And I called the Lakers and I said, this is a joke, right? This is not from, this is somebody else. This is not from Kobe. And John Black, for so long, the director of communications with the Lakers, said, oh no, he called me to get your address, so I know it's not a joke. And at the time, Kobe's daughter was 2 years old. My son was yet to be born, and I got a lecture, a stern one, with certain words in it from Kobe about the things I better do to start taking care of my health. And we talked about children and families. And a good amount of the time that I covered the NBA and would interact with Kobe Bryant, the conversation was not necessarily about basketball. It was very early on. He knew that I had covered Michael Jordan's career a lot, most of it. And we would talk about that because that was always just sort of pushed in front of him. And Kobe was so curious about that. But as he got older, he expressed curiosity in so many other ways. I mentioned earlier how it's just his intellect. I don't want people to overlook. Yeah, you can talk about 81 points. You can talk about 5 championships. You can talk about MVPs. You can talk about all of that stuff, and it's all pertinent to some degree, but not as much as sort of the person. There was a time, I guess, late, maybe the last week of his career, and the Lakers were not going to go to the postseason. The team was falling on hard basketball at times, perhaps. And Kobe had to do a lot of news conferences. He had to do a lot of goodbyes. I certainly sat with him and we had an interview. But I knew he knew so much about language and languages. And I said to him, how many languages do you really speak? You don't let us in on stuff like that. And he said 2. English and Italian. And everybody knew about those 2. And he said, that's it. And I'm like, I don't believe you. There's more language in you. I don't believe this. And about an hour or so later, maybe, we're doing an interview. He's in the Staples Center, and there was no translator. And someone started to speak to him in Spanish. And he looked for a translator, no one was there. And he just said, oh, what the hell, and just did the interview in completely, as far as I could tell, and so were the questioners, perfect Spanish. And he was, he was taking Mandarin lessons, I believe he told me at one point. This is after retirement. And just the curiosity, the intellect, it went far, far, far beyond basketball. And in the last interview that I did with him, a sit-down interview, and we probably aired 3.5 minutes or so of it on ABC and/or Sports Center. He talked about what it is that he was interested in, what fascinated him, what consumed him. And it was the art of storytelling, which, of course, somebody who's been a journalist for a hell of a long time is really fascinated by that. And we talked about it on and off camera. We talked about it for months, but that time we talked about it on camera. For a long time, I was one of the probably a few people sort of sworn to secrecy about what he wanted to do and why he wanted to do it, and that was fine. But then he talked about it on camera, and it was fascinating. And I've looked forward to that, to him doing that further in the future. And it's difficult to imagine us without that talent, that curiosity, that intellect, that passion for knowledge and relating it. And there were so many sides to him. And you're going to hear, there are a lot of people better equipped to talk about the basketball part of this. We have a whole range of people at this network who can talk about playing with him and playing against him. And I've watched it all. I loved it all. But those things aren't the first thoughts that I've had today.
Yeah, endless drive on and off the court, as Michael has just chronicled for us, to show you how much time flies. That 2-year-old you were talking about, Natalia is now 17, and his wife Vanessa, his widow, has a 3-year-old in Bianca and a 7-month-old in Capri. Kobe Bryant, that is her name. I mentioned this at the top here, Michael. Roughly 1 out of every 4 players in the NBA right now was born outside the United States. And if Michael Jordan and his crew in '92 brought the game to the rest of the world, Kobe and LeBron might have accentuated it, taken it to the next level for the rest of the world. With his Italian background and the way you said you covered him, never mind just Kobe Bryant as the player or as the person off the court, but the impact he had around the world is something I think that's coming into focus today. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I was in China this summer, and Kobe is still one of the most revered, if not the most revered, professional athlete. Many trips there that he made. Revered. Remember, we're talking about a development with the Dream Team. Yes, it absolutely sort of crystallized with that in the summer of 1992 in the run-up to that. And that sort of, the craze, the international basketball craze, they precipitated it, ignited it, if you will. And then so Kobe coming along 4 years later certainly became, in a lot of ways, the face of that global popularity of basketball. Not just the NBA, but basketball. And he was proud of that. I mean, that was something that he got a great kick out of for people who thought, oh, he's not going to want to sort of go back, to what we think of as a more youthful time and represent his country in the Olympics. They were wrong. You were looking at pictures now. And he loved it, talked about it, loved the international part of the game, talked about international players. It was great to be in the sort of the mixed zone at the Olympics. And again, hear Kobe communicating in other languages with international athletes in their languages. And you would see it, and they would just be, beside themselves. They could not believe they were having this opportunity in the midst of their international competition to talk to Kobe Bryant in this particular way. And so there's so much of that you don't necessarily see when you just look at him in a Laker uniform. It was part and parcel, and he was certainly proud of wearing that Laker uniform, but there was so much more to him.
It's such a great way you encapsulated that. Many people in the society in which we live, because we're turning over so fast and the news cycle is so quick, somebody that's normally 3-4 years out of the NBA is really not on the front burner. But to Kobe Bryant's legacy and his perspective, he is as big of a force outside of basketball after retiring as he was in his brilliant 20-year career, and gone too soon. Michael, appreciate the perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Zubin, clearly so many people around the league have been affected by this. This was the scene in Atlanta, the Hawks taking on the Wizards. Of course, Vince Carter, a contemporary of Kobe Bryant. There's Trae Young, who spent some time with Kobe Bryant, and this is the opening tip of the game. And you see Trae Young wearing number 8, and they take an 8-second violation to start the game. Of course, Kobe came into the league wearing the number 8. He finished with number 24. And so when the Wizards got the ball, they took a 24-second shot clock violation as well, showing their respect to Kobe Bryant as you get a standing ovation there in Atlanta. The Pelicans and the Celtics, they also had to take the court after learning about the news of Kobe Bryant. You see Lonzo Ball there, who grew up outside of Los Angeles, drafted by the Lakers, played there at UCLA. Clearly, Kobe was someone that he looked up to, and this is how they start the game as well. Taking a 24-second shot clock violation, standing ovation there in New Orleans as, again, the word of Kobe's death starts to spread around the country and people start to absorb what's happening and the emotions come out, and then you want to show respect for what has happened. And then Celtics get the ball. They do the exact same thing. Some very heated games between the Lakers and the Celtics through the years. Of course, even when Kobe was there, 2008, the Celtics won the championship. 2 years later, Kobe came back and won that game. He said, I wanted to win a championship, but also wanted to beat the Celtics in doing it. He was able to do that. And then the Suns and the Grizzlies. Saw a shot there of Devin Booker. This is in Memphis. I remember when I worked in Memphis, Zubin, the Lakers would come there and play a preseason game once a year for a couple of years. And there were Laker fans throughout the place, including those Kobe Bryant jerseys. Here's Doc Rivers earlier today.
I haven't. Listen.
How difficult is it to play a game right now?
I don't know. I just don't have a lot to say. the news is just devastating to everybody who knew him, who've known him a long time. And, you know, he means a lot to me, obviously. You know, he was such a great opponent, you know. It's what you want in sports. He had that DNA that very few athletes can ever have. You know, the Tiger Woods and the Michael Jordans. You know, it's funny. I was getting to know him more since he retired. You know, yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, we have to go play. I mean, the news is just so devastating for Vanessa and his family, and there's just so many people he touched, you know. And you know, it's looking at my young players and seeing how emotional they are. They didn't even know him, you know, and it just tells you how far his reach was. So, and this is just shocking news for all of us. And sorry, I don't have a lot to say. I just can't. I have to go talk to a team before a game and tell them to play a game.
Clearly, the emotions are running deep for those who knew Kobe Bryant the longest and maybe even the most personal. Brian Windhorst, ESPN NBA insider, joins us now on SportsCenter, and Brian's covered the league for quite some time. Brian, how are you putting into words how Kobe's death is affecting so many people on this Sunday afternoon?
One of the things I'm thinking about right now, Michael, is that mainland China is waking up on Monday morning, and he has millions upon millions of fans in China, and they're waking up to this news. And we know what it means to the NBA community and to the American sports fans. Having been in China and seen what, you know, I was just there for the World Cup over last summer. Kobe was there, and the respect and the adulation that they have for him. I'm just thinking about what we're going to see in this next 24 to 48 hours, where we see the whole world react, and we see just what his star, how far it went. This is one of the most unique situations we've ever seen as far as loss in American pro sports. The active players that are playing today, they all grew up on Kobe. They, you know, when you talk to players today, they adore him. I will never forget, in the wake of the Cleveland Cavaliers winning the championship in 2016, Kyrie Irving wanted to celebrate that with his hero, who was Kobe. And he went into the locker room after the game, and he FaceTimed with Kobe with the champagne in the locker room. And, of course, Kyrie, when he learned of the news today, couldn't play and went home from the game at Madison Square Garden. The effect on the worldwide basketball community and the effect on the active players who care for him so much, these next 3 to 5 days, we're going to see a period of mourning like we haven't seen in modern sports in our lifetimes.
You know, Brian, that's a good point. I've been trying to put this into a greater context here and think of another example of an athlete passing away so suddenly, but also at the level of popularity and praise and respect that Kobe had amongst his peers, and even some of those who didn't necessarily like him when they played against him in the NBA. And I'm having a hard time coming up with it, whether it's in basketball or any other sport. Maybe Roberto Clemente, but he was so well respected, and that was, you know, while he was still playing. But this feels different in the immediacy, Brian, and I'm having a hard time putting it into perspective of just how big a deal this is. And you mentioned how this morning is going to affect the NBA. There are games scheduled right now that are going on. You clearly see players have a difficult time competing in those moments. I'm not sure how that's going to change over the next couple of days.
Well, the only thing I could compare it to in my lifetime, Michael, is Dale Earnhardt. And I'm not a NASCAR fan, but I certainly knew them, and I saw how that affected that community. But the scope of the NBA and the scope of basketball is so exponentially bigger across the world. One of the things that blew me away was when Kobe announced his retirement, now he didn't plan on announcing it when he did, but he had such a rough start to that last season in 2015-16 that he announced his retirement. I want to say it was November or early December. And what ended up happening was an incredible outpouring. Every single place he went, the fans craned to get him like a conquering hero. The players from every team came to greet him and talk to him after the games, even the players who didn't know him very well. I remember attending a game in Washington, Kobe's last game in Washington, and the fans were treating him as if he was one of the greatest players in Wizards history. He didn't have any history with the Wizards fan base. He didn't have any history with the New Orleans fan base other than playing there once a year, twice a year. And when I saw that outpouring for his retirement as what turned into a 4-month coronation, my eyes were opened as to just how popular Kobe was. Michael, it's still hard to talk about him in past tense, to be honest with you. But I think even the reaction that we're seeing today in these last few hours, I think it's going to pale in comparison to when we see this sink in across the world. I mean, even the Philippines, when the Philippines, there's millions of people in the Philippines who worship Kobe Bryant. When they wake up to this in the next hour or two, the shock that's going to hit there, I mean, that defines who he was as a player and as a persona, the way he stretched to all corners of the globe.
Yeah, superstar personified is Kobe Bryant. As I said earlier, you go to a Laker game on a Friday night or a Saturday night, some of the biggest stars in the world are there, and Kobe Bryant was the guy that everyone wanted to talk to. Brian Windhorst joined us here on SportsCenter. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Some very interesting perspective there from Brian Windhorst. You know, in that final NBA game, he scored 60 points against the Golden State Warriors. And he said, if you were with us a little bit earlier today, he did say, for 20 years, all you guys wanted me to do was pass, pass, pass. And then in my last game, you're like, shoot, shoot, shoot. He did, to the tune of 60 points. And what a way to go out. And in his words, on that night, in that building, you're looking at Mamba out, one of the greatest final game performances from one of the greatest players in NBA history.
Kobe Bean Bryant playing in his final NBA game.
We have known since November Kobe would say goodbye on April 13th.
And this is the end, the final moment of his illustrious career.
We are here to celebrate greatness.
Please put your hands together for Kobe Bryant.
We are underway. Turn back the clock there, desperate to get to the basket and score. And he does. Kobe to the basket. Oh, pretty. And one.
Get it to Kobe.
Got it again.
Three-pointer by Bryant. Good! Are you kidding me?
He might score 40 tonight. He's got 21 points.
When you got nothing else going, you got Kobe going. I mean, he can do it all by himself.
Hits the three. 35.
How do you get him to 50?
Well, we're going to see. We're going to try. What a finale for Kobe Bryant. Going to the basket. Kobe Bryant.
There it is.
A 50-point game in his farewell. Bryant for three. Go! On the move with the jumper. He got it! One of the great farewell performances in any sport. 60 points.
What can I say? Mamba out.
And a fitting way to go out, to say the least, for Kobe Bryant. Bill Russell, one of the all-time greats, went to Twitter to share some of his thoughts and perspective. Janine and I are absolutely shocked to hear the loss of one of my favorite people and one of the best basketball minds in the history of the game. Our hearts and prayers to Vanessa and his girls. Kobe Bryant, you were my biggest fan, but I was yours. Hashtag rest in peace, Mamba.
Want to mention that those two greats came together when Bill Russell was the recipient of the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. Perhaps we'll hear from that here in our next hour. A reminder, Kobe Bryant and his daughter are survived by his wife Vanessa and 3 children, Bianca, Natalia, and Capri.
man. I'm thinking tacos.
Hey, you guys look like foodies. Would you like to try our trashy back ribs?
Oh, that sounds great.